Hi guys, thanks very much for joining me today. I dare say you're not doing much else, so you might as well come in and listen to me waffle on. I was undecided whether to do another question time if there'd be enough interest, but I put a post on the community page and there seemed to be plenty enough people with some questions. I'm not the brightest guy in the world, so please don't ask me any hard questions. Just to get us started, I'm going to take some of the questions that were given on the community page. So I'm going to start off with Robert Alp's question. Where are your favourite places to fish and why? Well, I do stillwater fishing, I do loch style fishing, and I do river fishing. So it's a tough old question that. I think river fishing, I don't think I'd rather be anywhere else in the world than the River Socha in Slovenia. It's absolutely stunning. It's probably one of the most beautiful places in the world. Loch style fishing, I don't think you can beat Rutland water, but saying that, the Lake of Menteith is a very beautiful place to go fishing. Stillwater wise, well, take your pick, there's lots to choose from. I really like Albury, but that's probably more to do with the fact that it's only 25 minutes from the house. So I hope that answers your question, Robert. Moving on, Raymond Lewis, can you talk a little about river access in the UK? Is it always pay to fish or are there public waters? That's quite a tough question as well, Raymond, because I can only vouch for what is around me, and I live in the south of England, so I'm in chalkstream country, and there's very, very little that you get for free. In Scotland, the rules are slightly different. I think you can still have the right to roam and catch fish. I'm sure I'll be corrected if that's incorrect, but down here it's really difficult. There are little stretches, there's stretches of the Test even, and the Itchen, that there's tiny little pockets of water that you can access and fish. But generally, syndicates, landowners, they're monetising our waters, and there's not much that you can access. I hope that goes some way to answering your question. I know it's maybe not the answer you want to hear. I'd like to have some more rivers that I can just walk up to. It seems to be the further south you come, the more money you pay to fish, but that's just the way it is. Hi Chris, hi Robert, thanks for tuning in. So moving along. And it's another one from Robert. Your views on how we can attract more people to take up fly fishing. Well, we're living in the golden age of fly fishing. Since COVID, everyone wants to get outside and do some activity, and fly fishing seems to be very popular getting. How do you encourage more people? Well, what I would suggest is that old farts like me have had our time, and we just really need to try and get youth involved, and to do that it's extremely difficult, because we also now live in, it might be the golden age of fly fishing, but it's also the golden age of PlayStation 4 and Xbox, and certainly getting my kids away from a screen. In fact, I've given up shouting at them now. If I want something done, I text them on the phone from my seat in the living room, and then they still ignore me, so it's by the by. But anyway, talking about getting kids into fishing, I would say that you've got to get the fisheries on board, and it's maybe a radical suggestion. I know these people have got to make money, but I think if an angler is taking their child under 12, for example, the child should be fishing for free. You know, it's no skin off the fisheries. Nose, I wouldn't think.
I found this on the web for taking a child under 12, for example.
That's Siri telling me how we get people into angling. Shut it, Siri. The other thing I would suggest, and this might be a wee bit controversial, I'm a member of the Salisbury and District Club, and I'm very privileged to be a member of the Salisbury and District Club. But what I would say is they have some quite antiquated rules. Things like upstream dry fly, that's a yesteryear concept, to be perfectly honest with you. And if you take a kid along to a river and tell them that we're going to sit on the riverbank, wait until we see a fish rise, and then maybe have a go at it with a dry fly, that's not going to encourage youth into fishing. We've got to get past the history and the tradition. I know it's important to a lot of people, it's important to me, but if you want to encourage youth into fly fishing, you've got to show them modern techniques that will catch them fish. You get a kid with a fish in their hand, and you've got somebody that will either take it on as a hobby for life, or they will simply drift away from it, as I did as a kid, into the bars and loose women, and but you do come back to it. Eventually somebody will pick you up and you'll come back to it. So that's what I think. You know, we've got to modernise. Fly fishing in America is absolutely huge, and because they've made it quite a sexy sport, and people want to get involved, youth want to get involved with that. So I hope that that's my views. It's probably very controversial, but that's what I think of that. Hi Mike. Still in my pit. Yeah, I wished I was still in my pit. Hi Jane, thanks for tuning in, love. Nigel, some urban rivers in Yorkshire are free fishing, parts of the Don in Sheffield. I've actually fished that part of the Don in Sheffield. It's right behind the football stadium, isn't it? Clark Coleman actually showed me that. It was, in fact, I think it was a match on the day I fished. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. And the surprising thing, it's free fishing, and it's absolutely stuffed to the gunnels with wild fish. Great to know about these places. But there is a book called Trout and Dirty Places, and that often points you in the right direction. But even some of them rivers from that book are now starting to be monetised, and people are taking them to make money out of. Michael Grant's telling me that there's a few fisheries that do father and son tickets. I think that's a fantastic thing. Unfortunately, I tried to force my children into fly fishing far too early, and ever since then they spit at me if I come near them talking about fly fishing. So there's none of that for me. Okay, I'll take another question from the sheet. This is from Fishing Adventures UK. Who was the best angler you have shared a boat with? Well, that's a canny question. It's a bit ambiguous as well. The best angler I ever shared a boat with, or who have I had the most fun on a boat with? Well, I've got to say the guy that got me right into competition fishing was a guy called Ronnie Christie, and to this day, when we get out together, I can't help but laugh my arse off all day. We hardly do any fishing actually. We're just laughing. It's really good, and I think the older you get, it's more important, rather than catching fish, is who you're spending your time with. And there's nothing I like better than fishing in a boat with Ronnie Christie. Now, if you meant who do I think is the most talented angler I've ever fished with, that's almost an impossible question as well. I've fished competitions for around 30 years, and I've fished with some of the best anglers in the United Kingdom. The ones that would stand out to me, and there's two different kinds of anglers. I think there's guys that work really hard to get where they've got, and there's guys that are just naturally talented. It doesn't matter what you do. You can have exactly the same on and they will outfish you. It's like they've got a seventh sense to find fish. And the one thing that sticks in my mind is I fished with a guy called Phil Thomas, who is ex-RAF, and I'd known Phil for years and years, and was on the receiving end of batterings by the RAF every year at the inter-services. But Phil Thomas, I got the pleasure of sharing a boat with him at Draycott in an AMFC. And in all the 30 years of competition, I've never got on a boat and felt outmatched or outgunned or under any pressure to beat anyone. But that day I had bad gout, and Phil kindly gave me the engine. and we went over, and it was a flat calm, and the boat just drifted a certain way, and he got into a pot of fish, and I got into a tangle, and by the time I'd untangled, he'd had 7 fish in the boat, and I was still scratching round for my last fish. And I was thinking, this is it, you know, all them years that I've sat in a boat and grannied people, I was going to get grannied that day, but luckily some stupid fish latched on and saved my blushes. But yeah, Phil Thomas, absolutely phenomenal angler. I think he still does quite a lot of fishing. There's another couple notable mentions, you know, I mean, there's some superb anglers out there. Jock Kettles, phenomenal. You know, if he gets on the fish, you better pick your game up or he'll be all over you like a rash. Another guy's Wayne Jones. You know, I fished with Wayne as a young soldier, and it was funny because back then he was like a kid compared to me because I was ancient. But I would watch Wayne, and he would pull fish out hand over fist. Now he was a Welsh junior, so you know he could fish, but he had a natural ability that I seldom see in people. There's another guy called Charlie Will, same detail, just a natural ability to catch fish. So I hope that kind of answers your question. I can't really put my finger on the best angler I've ever fished with. I fished with Ian Barr in an England team, one of my first caps, and I didn't get to fish with him, but just from the way he was speaking, I knew that I was in the presence of somebody that really understood what was going on beneath the surface when he cast his flies into the water. And maybe one day I'll get to share a boat with him, but I dare say Ian Barr's probably, if not definitely, the best loch style angler in this country at the minute. But I hope that answers your question. I'm just going to read some of the comments. When fishing a bushy dry fly, streaking caddis size 8, I am fishing a medium-sized river with quite a lot of stones, and sometimes 4 to 5 pound trouts. Can I use a 4x leader in these conditions? Where are you fishing, Bert? And why am I no fishing there? 4 to 5 pound trouts, wow, that's amazing. Can you, so what's the question? 4x leader. I would think that if you're using the right rod and setup, you would have absolutely no problem with 4 to 5 pound fish, but I wouldn't be using a rod much heavier than a 4 weight to cushion that tippet against them fish. I hope that answers your question, Bert. Phil, good afternoon. What would you use to clean the residue off round the neck of a bottle of UV resin? Mine is getting very tacky and yucky. Phil, mine does exactly the same, and all I do is I get a paper towel, soak it in hot water, and then just clean it off, and then I do that as often as is required. I hope that it's very simple. I hope that answers your question, Phil. Hi Benjamin. Hi, could Ben and Bethany get a shout out please? Thank you. Ben and Bethany, I hope you're having a grand day. That was easy, Benjamin. I love questions like that. Hi Nigel, which is your favourite fly to tie, and are you like most of us, 6 of the same and you're bored? No, I'm not like most of you, Nigel. I tie about 3 flies and I'm bored, and that's why, you know, if you follow me on Facebook or you're my friend on Facebook, you'll see that I post constant pictures of fly patterns, and that's not because I'm constantly tying, it's because I haven't got the dedication to sit down. I mean, some of these boys tie like sets of 20 flies, the same flies. That would bore me rigid. So no, I tend to tie in batches of 3, or if they're for my own boxes or something that I'm really keen to have lots of, I'll tie batches of 5. But yeah, really struggle with tying big orders. That's why I don't get into the commercial tying game, to be honest. I take my hat off to them guys. It's amazing what they do. Robert, hi, hope you're well. Here in Michigan, kids under 12 years old fish free. kids are usually started fishing panfish, then are introduced to fly fishing later on. Well, that's, you know, in America, I think they've got a lot right, and it's great to hear that kids actually get to go to the river and fish for free. And it would, you know, a mentorship program in this country, I would be more than happy to take a kid with their parent, of course, to a river and introduce them to the sport. If you know, if any rivers would allow that sort of thing, I think we could get people really involved. You don't really need a lot of kit to get somebody fishing, and getting youth involved is the key to the future, I think. NFW trout flies. Lindsay, where did your fishing start and at what age? Well, I think like any young kid, I used to go down the burn. I grew up in a town called Dunfermline in Scotland, and at the time, I believe Kelty Woods is now a housing estate where I used to go, but there was a little burn run through Kelty that you could jump across. We used to play a game called Koofles, actually, where you run and jumped across the burn, and more often than not you'd fall in the burn and your mum would go mental. But we'd catch little sticklebacks out of there, so I guess that's where it started. But you know, I joined the army at 15 as a junior soldier and kind of drifted away from fishing and stuff. But then I bumped into a guy, Ronnie Christie, who I talked about earlier, who we were both corporals at the depot, and we used to play a bit of squash on a Wednesday afternoon for sport when the army used to have a sports afternoon. I think the days are finished with as well. But he said, oh, it's the fishing season, I'm going fishing, do you want to come? And I thought, fishing? Not really, but we went along. I bought a beginner's kit, got back into it, Stillwater scene, and I think the very first place I went where I hooked a trout on a fly would have been Jubilee Lakes in Northumberland, and I'll never forget it actually, because I'd been about 3 times and not caught a fish, and Ronnie'd been pulling them out hand over fist, and he must have felt a bit sorry for me, because he said, oh, come here, I've got to go to the toilet, would you hold my rod? And so I was holding his rod, and obviously he'd already caught the fish. I wasn't that stupid, but you know, I bent into a fish, and after that was it. I was looking to get all the kit, and I was hooked after that, really, and I've fished really regularly ever since. I hope that answers your question. But I would kill for 4 or 5 pound fish regularly in my river, but you're right, it doesn't happen very often. If you're catching 4 or 5 pound trout out of river, that's an absolute joy. It must be amazing. I think the only place I've heard that's a regular occurrence is New Zealand, and I've yet to visit, but maybe one day. Have you used loop tackles, own leader and tippets? What do you think of them? I'm afraid I haven't, Bert. I've not used loops, leaders or tippets, but Loop are a very reputable company. I dare say they're very good. Hi Martin. Just got on the waiting list for the F&F Talon. Thanks for showing the vice. You made my day. Been looking for a law vice for years. This one will do fine. Well, I look at law vice. I've not been looking. I look at law vices and think holiday to Cuba and a decent vice, or a law vice. It's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's a no-brainer. I've been very pleased with the Talon. It seems to be a superb vice, and I'm looking forward to rattling out several more flies on it. I hope that, A. Morrison, I hope that answered the question. Really enjoying the vice, it's great. I didn't dislike my old vice. The Yantevik was a stunning bit of kit, but as I say, I want to branch into sort of pipe flies, tube flies, and I think the Talon will just be much better suited to that. So I've decided, you know, it's not like I'm spending my money on fishing. I might as well treat myself and get a new vice. Hi Reese, nice to see you on. If you had one Stillwater fly for winter and one for summer, what would they be? Is that Stillwater for a boat or Stillwater from the bank? Because they'd be different. Or have you gone to the toilet, Reese? Robert, have you ever fished competition, and if so, at what level? National or local? Yeah, my background's pretty much in competition fishing, Robert. So I fished a lot of loch style competition with the army team, and I've done quite a bit individually. I qualified for England, and despite the accent, but I have been living in Surrey for the last sort of 25 years, and it was just not practical to travel back to Scotland and qualify for Scotland. But I did want to fish at that level, so I went down the road of qualification for England, and I really enjoyed it. It was great, and I did my very best for England while I was in the team. But it's not like fishing for Scotland, you know. I think if I'd been living in Scotland, I would still be doing the national sort of qualifiers and stuff today and banging on at the Scotland team. But with the England thing, there are a few things that happened actually that kind of turned me off the whole national fishing, if you like. So qualification in England used to be through a process of elimination. You would turn up to the venue, and if you weren't in the top 6 or 7 people, you didn't qualify for the final, and that was your last chuck. What they do now is a national qualification where, as long as you've got the money and time, you can turn up to as many events as you like, and if you don't qualify after fishing 6 events, I dare say you're not going to qualify. Is what I would suggest to you. But that, to me, it doesn't really. You're at a disadvantage, because if you're a guy like myself that can maybe afford to go and do it once, and it just so happens you turn out the same day as the best 20 anglers in the country, you're going to be toiling to get a place, and then you're expected to go back to another venue, pay another £35, whatever it costs nowadays. I'm not really up to speed with it, but yeah, it just doesn't interest me anymore. And after I'd sort of decided I was packing it in, I've enjoyed my fishing much better. I've been able to go on some foreign holidays. I'm not spending as much money, and it's been good. I still do the odd bit with the Soldier Palmers and the affiliation of major clubs, and whenever I'm picked, and I really enjoy it. I think competition fishing, if you want to, as an angler, if you want to improve, the competition fishing is the fastest way of improving your angling, because you'll get a chance to share a boat with some very, very good anglers. Loch styling, river wise, you know, I've been in fields where I've been in fields with national champions, world champions. You know, Howard Croston, I've had the pleasure of watching Howard fish on Werwell and other venues, and what you learn off of these guys. I've controlled John Tyzak, Alex Bobba, and just phenomenal. It's a real steep learning curve, but you pick it up fast, especially if you're a competitive person. You know, you don't want to. I'll always remember talking about, I'm maybe rabbiting on a bit, but when I first learned to sort of fish rivers, a friend of mine, Graham Lumsden, really got me into the river fishing, and he was a competition angler, and he'd arranged a trip to Slovenia. So for my 40th birthday, seems like a lifetime ago now, we went out to Slovenia, and there was 4 of us. There was me, a guy called Graham Lumsden, who sort of led the trip, if you like, Graham Sharp, and James Gardner, and we were all knew each other, and we'd gone out, and the other boys had all fished the rivers quite a bit. I'd been on Werwell once or twice, and then I'd gone off to the mighty Sava, and it was like looking at the North Sea. But and I was quite pleased when I caught a couple of fish, and so lunchtime came round. They gave me the guide, actually. We'd hired the guide, and they said, look, he's less experienced, take him away and show him the ropes. And At lunchtime I wanders up, all cock a hoop, I've caught 6 fish. And everyone's going, oh, well done, Lindsay, well done. And I always remember looking and wondering, well, why have they not told me what they've caught? And so I asked the question, you know, how have you boys got on this morning? And Graham said, well, I've had about 47, and Graham Sharp had about 35, and I think James Gardner had about 50. And I'm thinking, ooh, I know nothing about river fishing, absolutely nothing. And if you're competitive, I said to myself, well, that's not happening ever again. It has happened, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, Robert. Let's get back to this. Reese is back for the toilet. Let me see. Small water from the bank. I'll tell you what, you're hard pushed all year to beat tying on a humongous small water. I just find it, you know, it might be a bit brutal, but it's just lethal. And I would have that all year, summer or winter. In the summer, sometimes I've found, and I've got back into my small water fishing this year, going down in size, and I remember saying to Cameron Craigs, who manages the Albury estate, he come along and said, oh, the fishing's been awful. I said, how you got on? I said, I'm doing quite well. He said, well, what are you using? I said, well, I brought my river boxes along by accident, and I'm using a size 18 Mary Nymph, which is like a pheasant tail, if you like, and that was absolutely lethal under a bung. I mean, I was the only person on the lake catching fish, and I think it was down to the size of fly. And as I was wandering round, you know, anglers were saying, well, I've seen you catching fish, how are you doing it? And I'm showing them, and they're going, well, my tippet won't fit through the eye of that fly. So yeah, it depends, but yeah, I wouldn't like to be limited to one fly, not with the amount I tie. Thanks for the question, Reese. Rob Smith, hi Lindsay, I know there has to be innovation, but what's your take on some of the ridiculous concoctions that are coming off the vice these days with equally ridiculous names? Oh, I think you're talking about me. What's my take on it? I think if people are enjoying it and having fun, then why not? It's, you know, I wonder if back in the day when Sawyer was sitting tying his pheasant tail nymphs, his peer group were looking at him going, that's ridiculous, that'll never catch on. And look where we are now.
Could you try again?
I need to turn Siri off. He's saying Frank Sawyer's a legend. I hope that answers your question, Rob. Live and let live is my feeling on it. I don't mind if people want to get inventive. Great. I mean, materials. For when I started fly tying, which was, you know, pretty much when I started fishing, you used to have very limited materials. Now there's so much available to fly tyers. It's absolutely phenomenal, and I think it's great. More power to their arms, what I say. Hi Paul. Here in Northern Ireland, the kids under 16 can get a decal permit. I'm not quite sure what that means. That lets them fish for the year for £6, but the waters can be a bit hit and miss. Again, Paul, it's still a great thing. You know, it gets kids out there and gets them involved. I think once you've got the bug, it's very hard to shake. I know very few people that have got into fly fishing and then stopped because they've just got bored with it. You know, I think people stop fly fishing because, in my case, they've died, or they're just not able to get out anymore due to ill health, and getting them involved at a young age. My friend said to me once, and his son's in the army now, and he said, I've taught him how to fish. He doesn't do it much now, but one day when he's older, he'll come back to it. And I think that's the truth of the matter. You know, people do drift back to it when they've got the time. if you had your plans all sorted for a competition, but on the day everything changes, what 5 flies would you not be without? That's an interesting question, Andrew. I'm going to answer it from a lock style perspective, because that's mainly my main arena for competition. So the 5 flies I would not be without. I certainly wouldn't be without a candy floss booby. Just absolutely lethal any time of year, and I would, in fact, if I could be limited to 1 fly, that would be what I'd use in competition without a doubt. But you've given me 5, so I'm going to give you 5. An orange blob, an orange fab, a cormorant, and a hare's ear. That would be the 5 flies that I wouldn't be without on the water, in various guises, obviously. I hope that answers your question, Andrew. Right, we seem to have, I think I've covered all the questions that are on the screen at the moment, so I'll just come back to my sheet of paper. So this one's from Daniel Duan. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Favourite tippet diameter while lock style fishing, and why? Well, funnily enough, up until last year, my favourite tippet diameter was 8.5 pounds, and that seemed to do me for my pooling game, my nymphing game. I never really had to muck about, so 8.5. But just last year, when we had them series of lockdowns and we eventually got out fishing again, I went up to Rutland and I got absolutely destroyed by the fish there. Now, I'm not sure whether they just stocked better quality fish, or you know, the gap in the fishing had made them more ferocious. I have no idea what it was, but I just got snapped up all the time. So what I've done is I've moved to 12.5 pound rivage, and they don't snap that. So yeah, recently I've been using 12 pound. One from A. Morrison. What is your favourite Scottish lochs you have fished over the years? Well, strangely enough, I've not fished a great deal in Scotland, only when I've been on holiday, and I've fished a few obviously over the years, but Loch Leven's a bit special. It's, you know, it's not far from Dunfermline where I was raised, but it's just an absolute peach of a place. It's a lot of people call it the home of modern fly fishing, but Loch Leven, I would say, is my favourite. But there is another wee place up near Granton upon Spey. It's a wild water called Loch and Dorb, and it's, if you can survive the midges, you can wade out about 50 metres into the loch, and you're only catching tiny little fish, 6-7 inches, but they're such a great pleasure. And getting them on light tackle, 3-weight rods on dry fly is just great fun. But yeah, I'd have to say Loch Leven, with the Lake of Menteith running in there as well. Any experience with spey or trout spey? My friend used to be a gillie on the River Spey, Jock Ryan. He's a fabulous angler as well. Actually, a fantastic competitor. He was another one of the RAF golden boys who used to revel in the destruction of the army each year at inter-services. But when he left the RAF, he took up a job as a gillie on the River Spey at Killarney, and very often when I was up on holiday, he'd hub me down for the day, and he'd show me how to do the old spey casting, and which I quite enjoyed for about 20 minutes. But salmon fishing to me is really boring. You know, you're out there, there's not much you can do to make a salmon take your fly. You know, you can cast it in the area, but they're not feeding fish. It's probably the ultimate challenge of and dedication, salmon anglers, so I take my hat off to them. But it's not for me, so I'd usually give it a couple of hours with a salmon rod, never caught a salmon to date on a salmon kit, and I'd go and get my river stuff out the car and do quite well on the little brown trout, which in the par, so that entertained me. So no, not really any experience with salmon fishing. The only time I've ever caught salmon is while I've been bugging for grayling, so yeah, not really. Thanks for the question, Robert. Your lad got you into fly fishing, Nigel. Yeah, that's unusual. That's unusual. Hi, Kyle. What would be top 3 river trout nymphs? That's easy. The Mary nymph is number 1. A red or orange collar pheasant tail, and a fly called the black mull killer. And I can't tell you what that is because me and my boys, the veterans, we still use that in competition, and it's absolutely lethal. And I'd be shot or hung up by the feet by my pals if I told you what it was. But that's my 3 top river nymphs. Hi Dan. You fish Loch and Dorb every year? It's a grand place. I mean, the trouble I had is I would go and fish it for a couple of hours because we'd be staying in a little village called Downane Bridge. So once I'd done my holidaying bit with the family, I would nip up to Loch and Dorb and have a wee fish. But at that time of the evening, generally you're getting savaged by midges, and yeah, Scottish midges, you can't beat them. Like, Pro Skipper, have you ever fished tenkara, and your view on presentation over fly styles? I've never fished tenkara. I've been really tempted to give it a go though, because I can see the benefits of it, you know, I really can. But because up until very recently I still did quite a lot of competitive fishing on the river, and obviously tenkara is not allowed in competition, and my fishing was really geared towards meeting Fitzmoosh and international rules, so I haven't really got any experience of that. But maybe I'll pick up a tenkara rod at some point and give it a go. But I'm reading a book at the moment, and I'm most of the way through it, is the Nymphing Bible, and some of that, it talks about presentation of flies and the triangle of awesomeness, and it does ring true with me. You know, the less sort of materials such as fly line, tippet, leader material that you've got on the water, the less spooky the fish are. So yeah, it'd be interesting. I'd like to give it a go, but I'd probably need to get somebody that knows what they're doing to give me a cabbie of it first. Hi Darren. Sunburst blobs on Loch and Dorb do well. I deserve to be banned for this comment though. Yeah, I'm trying to work out how I can get rid of you. No, I've not tried sunburst blobs on Loch and Dorb. Little sedges and that work just fine though, but I can imagine if you gink up a sunburst blob, it's very effective. Yeah, Pro Skipper, I would definitely give the one fly challenge a go, because I very often fish just one fly. The club I'm a member of, actually, it's only allowed one fly, so I often fish just a single nymph or a single dry fly, and I don't have any problems with that. I think it's a confidence thing, you know. A lot of guys, if they're used to fishing 3 flies, they'll think if they go down to 1 fly that they've not got as much chance, but I don't think that's the case. I think if you're angling properly, you can make that fly and present that fly in different levels of water column and still catch plenty of fish. So yeah, I'd have no problem doing the 1 fly challenge, as long as I could have them in various weights. If we're talking river fishing, yeah, I'd give that a go, no bother. Paul Scott's saying, for those of you that are not following the comment, Paul Scott says, in Donegal you can lose 2 stone in weight with the midges in an average evening's fishing. Well, I think the Scottish midges would give you a run for the money. But yeah, I can imagine it's not so great. I better get myself out to Donegal because I could do with losing about 2 stone. Right, let's go back to the sheet. How are we doing for time? Not bad. So, this question's from Chris McCarthy. I'll make this an easy one, as the 17th is my birthday. Happy birthday, Chris. I hope you didn't lay too heavily onto the whiskey last night. You'll be a wee bit wobbly. I'm a wee bit wobbly every day. Who or what got you started in fly fishing? Well, Chris, you were probably still sleeping, but I did mention that at the start of the video. It was a guy called Ronnie Christie that got me into the state I'm in at the moment. Let's see, next one. JN Erkeg. I hope I pronounced that right. What do you have to change when you go from fishery to loch fishing? I take it you mean boat fishing, stillwater fishing to boat fishing. I don't think you really need to change very much. It depends on what level that you want to do it to. Stillwater fishing, I think a popular length of rod for stillwater fishing is 9 foot, 9'6". Generally from the boats you use a little longer rod at 10 foot, and the reason you're using a 10-foot rod is to hold your flies as far away from the boat as possible, and of course whoever's on the engine will generally be casting over the guy that's sitting on the point's head if you're sharing a boat, and that little bit extra length of rod helps no end with that. I hope that answers your question there, Jan. You getting some fly time done, Robert? Glad to hear it. Dan Meyer, I hope I've pronounced that right, Dan. On another subject, in your experience, how do sponsorships work in the angling world? It's something I've always wondered. I see a lot of anglers promoting various companies. Right, it's different. It's different for each company, I suppose. Now, I wouldn't say I'm sponsored. I'm supported. Now, what does that mean? So, Which would send me various new bits and bobs to try, and I don't have to pay for them. And each year I get a little budget to spend on Witchwood fishing tackle, so things like waders, boots, consumables that I'm using quite a bit, so I'm supported by them. I'm also supported by Hanak, who send me the hooks to do the fly tying videos, which is great. Now, sponsorship to me means that you are being paid a monetary fee to support and publicise a company. Now, I'm not sure how many anglers in this country are actually really sponsored. I think there's lots of people affiliated to tackle firms, and they'll get, for example, if you were, and I'm just saying this hypothetically because I don't know about other companies, but let's say Hardy sponsor you, they would give you your fishing tackle at cost plus postage, perhaps, something like that. But sponsorship and being supported are two different things, so nobody's currently supporting me. If I could get some product placement, I would be no. So sponsorship, yeah, wouldn't it be great to get paid to go fishing and just say stuff was great? But I don't think that actually happens. I think people are given kit and they use it. I certainly do. What I would say about sponsorship and support is, if it's shite, I won't use it. It's simple as that, and I'm very happy to go back to Witchwood and say, look, you've got it wrong for this reason, that reason, and that reason. And I don't know, they might not appreciate it, but I think they do appreciate it. They want to know if the products aren't good. and I'm happy to do that. Now, how do you get into a position where you can be supported or sponsored? Well, I suppose nowadays social media is a huge driving vehicle for advertising and sales. And before I started doing the YouTube a couple of years ago, I was always posting pictures of flies because I just love fly tying, and that got the attention of Witchwood, and at the time there was a guy called Steve Cullen who was the brand manager for Witchwood, and I was lucky enough to fish in a team with him, and he asked me to come on board with Witchwood, and I've kind of been there ever since. And the same was said, I could say the same for Franta Hanak, you know, because I was posting so much pictures of flies. He said, Lindsay, would you like to use some of my hooks? The funny thing was with Franta is I was already using Hanak hooks because I'd gone completely barbless with my fly tying some years ago, and so it was great that Franta approached me and said, look, I'll supply you with the hooks, and I'm very happy that he still does, and happy to still be using the Hanak hooks. They really are a great product. So I hope that answers your question, Darren. I think that what you need to do is find somebody in America that's doing this, and they'll tell you all about sponsorship deals, because I believe some of these Bass Pro guys are millionaires. I am far from a millionaire, but yeah, a big shout out to Lucy and Oz, who are watching on from my house back home. Rob, oh, glad you've come back to me. I agree, live and let live, but can't help think competition fishing has ripped the soul out of game fishing. Reduces the fish to a commodity, not a quarry. I know, I'm old fashioned. No, I kinda, I would agree with you, Rob, to a certain extent, and I certainly don't like the way that competition fishing's now gone to a catch as many fish as you can and tally them up and put them back. I much prefer the old system where you caught and killed 8 fish and then you got a time bonus, whether that be right or wrong. When they first made the transition to catch and release, I thought, oh, this is great, you know, we're not killing fish, because I don't even like trout, so why on earth would I want to kill something that I'm not going to eat? And I was very pleased that the catching, but then what happened to get, as you say there, it became a commodity. You were just looking to rip out as many fish as fast as possible, and I think it took something away from competition fishing, and I don't think it's being old-fashioned. I think some people argue that's not correct. I think you might have something there, but the more, I think, the older I get, the less competitive I'm becoming, and I get much more pleasure now from taking somebody fishing and getting them onto fish, showing them something new, and I get a bit of a buzz out of that more than the competition. But yeah, I think you might have something there, Rob, definitely. Paul, thanks for tuning in. Having fished Avington and Deaver Springs in Hampshire, what's your thoughts on no catch and release down there? Is it because of hotter weather, bigger fish, an expensive day unlike Scotland? Well, Paul, you're absolutely right. I've only ever fished Deaver Springs, and that excuse me, and that was a long time ago. And I remember turning up, and when I say a long time ago, I'm talking maybe 20 years. And I went to Deaver Springs, and actually I was teaching an equipment repair course at the time, and one of the lads on the course had come over from Germany who fly fished, and he said, oh, I really want to go to Deaver Springs. I said, well, I've never been, it's really expensive, come on, I'll go with you. Wednesday afternoon, we had sports afternoon, so we packed up and off we went to Deaver Springs. And it's a lovely place. I don't know if you've been, beautiful, but you go fishing there, and the idea is you wander around the crystal clear ponds, picking out your trophy fish, and you're stalking, and you catch a big fish. I didn't do that. I cast out about 6 times and had my 3 fish on the bank, and they were all about £7, like peas in a pod if you like, and like you say, a very, very expensive day. And I just thought to myself, I'll not be doing this again. You know, for the same money, I could have went to Rutland, paid for my pal, bought him breakfast, got a boat and caught 16 fish. So yeah, so what was the question? Catch and release. Now, I'm not sure if I'm right, so I'm sure the fishing police will be on my case if I've got it wrong, but regardless of what size trout grow to, their heart is the same size. So if you catch a £2 fish, that heart is pumping the blood round that £2 fish. Now if the fish is £20, the heart isn't much bigger. So I don't think you can catch that sort of size of fish from a small still water and expect to return it healthily. Very difficult, I would think. I mean, it can be done if you play it hard and you get it in quick and you revive it properly before releasing it back into the water. I think you'd probably get away with that. But so you'll, if you follow the YouTube channel, you'll know that I've done a couple of videos at Manningford Trout Fishery. I've also did a few videos at Albury Estate. Now both those fisheries are catch and kill. Manningford does offer a catch and release water, which is up the back, and you can do catch and release on that water. I would like to see fisheries offering a sporting ticket during the winter months or spring. In summer, if you don't know exactly what you're doing, i.e. you play a fish in hard and you make sure it's recovered before you release it, it more than likely is going to swim at the bottom of the pond and belly up, and nobody wants that. It's nothing worse than wandering around a fishery and seeing dead fish on the bottom of the pond because they've been poorly handled or mistreated. So I understand why they do it, and certainly those big fish waters, it would be very difficult to employ catch and release, I would think. I hope that answers your question, Paul. Do you like that, Chris? The Kit Kat cup? Jock's probably no watching. Another one for Pro Skipper. Has fly fishing become trendy and mainstream? For me, this is a good thing. Hate the old elite stuffiness. Do you think it will get as popular as it is in the States? No, I don't think in this country it will get as popular as it is in America. And then the reason I think that is that America have a huge hunting and fishing culture, and so that they're feeding off of that. Sorry, excuse me 1 minute. The kids want crisps and M&Ms. I'll pick the M&Ms up. Jesus. Yeah, I've gone off my track now. Crisps and M&M. Like a bloody waiter to that family, I swear. Yeah, so in America, they've got a huge following already. Them Bass Pro guys, you know, they're popularising fishing. So a huge audience. In this country, not so much. I think fishing's, I wouldn't say niche. I mean, I believe fishing's the most popular hobby in the country. But when we say fishing, we're talking about coarse fishing, carp fishing, sea fishing. You know, fly fishing is the nephew of these bigger disciplines of fishing, if you like. So I can't ever see fly fishing getting to that sort of level that they have in America. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong, but that's what I think, Skipper. John Hartley. Hello John, how are you? What's your thoughts on stocked fish in rivers? I think it would be wrong of me to say it's ruining the rivers, but I think you would be absolutely gobsmacked if you just stopped stocking fish in the rivers and just left them for a few years. And I say that because I've fished all around the country, and somebody mentioned earlier in this stream that was talking about the River Don. So now that's not stocked, and I can tell you now, I've seldom been to any river that has as many trout in it as that river is. So, and I take it you're sort of inclining that comment towards the chalk streams, you know, the River Test and even some of the Salisbury water that I fish myself. Yeah, I don't agree with it. I think fisheries would do just fine without stocked fish. Rivers. Stillwater fishing will always need stocked fish because people are taking them for the table, and that's fine and well. But yeah, John, if I could stop stocking the rivers, I certainly would do that. I think, I mean, it would get more challenging for sure, and if you're turning up on the test and paying £600 for your day or however much it costs to fish for trout on the River Test, I wouldn't know because I can't afford it. But you want to have a chance of catching a fish, so the way of doing that is sticking a load of stupid fish in to entertain these clients. But no, not for me. I would like to see stocking stopped. Hi Lee, glad you're tuned in. Robert, you're very welcome. Cheers Paul. Yeah, Skipper, I'm afraid so. I think I am right. Some of the I've got a few friends in America, and you know, they buy a state license and then just wander around fishing whatever they like. It's absolutely fantastic. But obviously, real estate in this country's quite confined, and it's very difficult to. And a lot of it is privately owned, and the landowners want to make a buck, so it's difficult. Whereas in America, it's like a huge play park. It's, you know, must be fabulous having all that fishing on your doorstep at relatively low cost. Hi Dan, how are you? Dan, I've never tried coastal fly fishing. You know what, it's something that was on my bucket list for 2020, and that's gone because of the various restrictions we had and various problems. But I know a couple of guys that, you know, fingers crossed we come out the other side of this lockdown. Sorry, my family keep texting me and they are going to get shot when I get home. Yeah, I'm going to tap them up and hopefully see what it's all about. I've got the kit to do it. I've just not had the opportunity as yet. So I'm going to give the coastal fishing a go, conditions permitting. Dan, do you have to pay to fish in the rivers there? Absolutely, yeah. Most rivers. As somebody's alluded to, there are a few rivers that you can walk on and have a little fish, but they tend to be about 100-yard stretches, and it won't keep you entertained for very long. If you want to do any sort of real fishing, you've got to go to a day ticket water, or you've got to be a member of a syndicate or a club. That's just how it is in the UK. I've been brought up like that, so I don't know anything different. You know, you pay your money, you take your choice. Some people go to the pub or the bookies. I go fishing. Hi Sam, that's a lovely comment, thanks very much. For starting, I don't know what kind of fishing you do, but if it's stillwater fishing, you won't go far wrong with starting tying mini lures, little mini lures that are going to catch you fish, because what will encourage you to tie more is tying flies that are catching your fish, and that'll really give you a little boost to do more. And then it's a case of branching out, getting into tying nymphs and buzzers and dry flies and various other things. And YouTube, we're on YouTube now. What a fantastic commodity for everybody. I mean, I dare say, most of my friends that tie flies to any kind of level learned from Davy McPhail. I learned most of the stuff I know from Davy McPhail videos. They're so clear. He goes through the techniques at a reasonable pace, and his delivery's spot on. And I still find myself, when I'm really toiling with something, going back to a Davy McPhail video and just watching it over and trying to get it down. So yeah, but keep it simple, stupid. I posted a little picture on Facebook the other day of a cormorant with a green for its body. Nothing to it, easy to tie. Keep your initial fly tying simple. Think to your proportions, and then start to get more adventurous once you've cracked one thing. That's what I'd suggest, Dan, and I wish you the very best of luck with that. Dartmoor. Skipper, I love the Dart. It's a great river. I really, really enjoy it there. It's not just the fishing about Dartmoor. It's just the whole wide open space that I love about it. I mean, it's plentiful fish-wise. I mean, you can catch bucket loads of fish, and on very light tackle, 2 weights, 3 weights. It's great fun. Yeah, you're very, very lucky. And I dare say, if you're down that neck of the woods, Skipper, you're probably able to get up to the River Frome, which holds some of the best grayling in the country. Hi Gary, how are you? What's the best spacing for a 3-fly Euro rig? Well, yeah, that's a tough one. If you're fishing for trout, I think, if you're talking about competition spacing, I think it's 50 centimetres distance apart. If you're not fishing competition and you're looking to fish for grayling with a 3-fly rig, I wouldn't have my flies much more than 12 inches apart, and maybe even closer sometimes on a 3-fly rig. I hope that answers your question, Gary. Hi Ben, how you doing? Loving the Q&A. What is your 3 go-to setups for small still water for your floating, intermediate, sinking lines? What flies and how many? Thanks. Ben, most of the still waters I fish, unfortunately, only allow you to fish a single fly, and it can be frustrating at times because there's nothing more I enjoy doing than the washing line technique. And for those that are tuned in that don't know what the washing line is, it's basically a buoyant pattern on the point with either 1 or 2 or even 3 nymphs or buzzers or whatever you like up the cast. And what you do is you cast out, straighten everything up, and you kind of, depending on how they want it, a really slow retrieve. And some of the takes are just phenomenal. I love fishing like that, but unfortunately with the waters I fish, it's a single fly. So on an intermediate line I would have something like a humongous. On a sunk line I would fish a booby pattern where permitted. A lot of fisheries, a lot of still water fisheries don't allow people to fish boobies on sinking lines, and the reason for that is a lot of people, they're not fishing when they do it. So doing what I'm suggesting here, it doesn't cause any harm to the fish. If you're fishing properly with a booby on a sinking line, it won't swallow it down its throat because you're in contact with that fly at all times. So when the fish takes, you hook it, and generally you're hooking it in the lip, and that's perfectly fine. On a floating line, I would use something like a hare's ear or a nymph, just on a single line, about about 10 foot of tippet on all them setups for single fly use. Hi Max, I hope the weather's okay in Italy. Sorry, there's been a load of comments and I've kind of lost where I am. Oh, here we go. Oof, Rob, you're asking all the hard questions today, aren't you, Rob? My last day on earth. I'd need to say, I want to say New Zealand, but I've never been, and if I go and I'm disappointed, I'll be gutted. My last day on earth, you know, I've got to really think about it. It need to be the River Socha in Slovenia. My last day on earth, got 1 day left to fish, I'd go there, definitely. Gary, sorry Lindsay, I meant grayling. Thanks for your answer. All the best for the season. Yeah, Gary, the grayling, and I think we're talking about the 3-fly cast. Grayling are so forgiving. They're I was listening to a podcast this morning, actually, walking the dog. It was the Fly Culture podcast. If you've never heard of the Fly Culture, it's like a magazine. It's run by a guy called Pete Tyjas. He's a real gentleman, a lovely guy, and he does a podcast. And the one I listened to this morning was with Hugh Morgan, who's a fantastic fisher and an even better caster. But Hugh was talking about grayling, his love for grayling fishing. It's his favourite sort of thing, and I'm kind of with him on that. Grayling are an amazing fish, and he was talking about how stupid they could be, and I was kind of chuckling along because fishing on chalk streams a lot, I watch the grayling react to the flies, and it's amazing. As Hugh says, you'll throw your fly at the fish, it'll move slightly left, it'll move slightly right, and you know, you'll not catch the fish. And then you'll do something stupid like stick a squiggly worm on, and your cast's been rubbish, and it's 3 foot away for the fish, and it'll dart over and snaffle it down. So yeah, grayling fishing, you can get away with quite a lot, and the spacing of your flies is one of them things you can get away with quite a lot. I hope that answers your question, Gary. Hi Daniel, how are you? Oklahoma? What time's it in Oklahoma, Mark? I hope it's the weather's fine for you out there. Hi Ron, I'm a complete beginner looking for advice on what to do first, as it looks like a minefield. I have looked at Midlands fly fishing for lessons, but at the moment not possible. Ron, it's getting started. If you don't know anybody that actually fishes already, getting started can be quite difficult. What I would say to you is the best thing you can do is join a club. Now I don't know exactly where you're, but I guess if you're saying the Midlands, is it? Are you based in the Midlands? If you're based in the Midlands, you've got a plethora of clubs, Rutland, Grapham, and once you've joined a club, if you put a message out on whatever, if they're using a forum or they're using a message board saying that you're a beginner and you'd like somebody to take you out and show you the ropes, I'm sure you'll have people more than happy to help out and give you a sort of steer on that. I hope that helps, and if you don't get any takers, Ron, you PM me and I'm more than happy to come up and give you a wee cabbie. Ben, I would use the washing line on all 3 lines. Certainly when I'm loch style fishing, it's a very very lethal technique. A lot of guys use it, the loch style, and you know, sometimes people will put a buoyant fly on the top dropper and on the point, and just fish the 2 nymphs in between. And you know, depending on the day, a lot of fish will take the nymphs, some will take the lure. It just depends. Simon, I have, funnily enough, I have been working away at my predator flies. You know, you talk about predator flies, and I'm following a few guys now on YouTube. Sven, an American chap, ties fantastic flies, but there's another guy called, and this is a real name, I didn't make this up, Gunnar Bramar. What a cool name. I wish my mum called me Gunnar Bramar. just sounds ace. But that guy is phenomenal. He doesn't only tie a fantastic predator fly, but he explains his thought process behind it. And you know, I'm a great believer in when I'm tying a fly, I'm looking for maximum movement. What am I trying to achieve with that pattern? And what Gunnar does really well is explain the movement of the flies. And I'm not really keen on doing a video of a predator fly that is just like a really tiny shadow of what these guys are producing. Now, you know, you say, well, in that case, why are you tying at all when you've got, you know, Barry Lord Clark and Davy McPhail out there? And, well, you know, I need my heroes. So I look up to them guys and aspire to be as good as that one day. But I can tie what I can tie, is what I'll say. But I'm not confident enough to go on camera and start tying predator flies at the moment. Maybe in 6 months, once I'm happy that I've got it down pat. But thanks for the question. Staffordshire. Ron, if you're in Staffordshire, probably Draycott is quite near to you, I would think, as it is if you're looking to do a bit of boat fishing. I know a guy actually that used to live in Staffordshire. So I don't know if you're on Facebook, Ron, but if you PM me, I can maybe put you in touch with a boy that'll give you a good steer as to where to get some tuition in Staffordshire. Hi Dean, Calgary. I visited there once in 1984. It was freezing. Lee Moores. How large of a streamer are looking to tie? Well, funnily enough, I don't know, Lee, if you caught the pike fishing video I did with Ben. And I had tied some flies for that day, and I'd obviously got them out, very proud of my efforts, and Ben sort of looked at them and then he took out his flies and I kind of went, wow, okay, give me one of them. And so I think some of Ben's flies were anywhere between sort of 12 and 20 inches long, so fairly big. I've just I've been sent some hooks by Franta. The Hanak have just produced a range of lure hooks, and I've been whittling away at them. But what I'm doing, because I'm not very good, I tie a fly and then I just cut it up and then reuse the hook because I don't want to waste it. I hope that answers your question. I've been watching Charlie Jardine. Charles Jardine, right? Yeah, I didn't know Charles had a YouTube channel. I know Alex has started one recently. Ron, is he? Or is it a TV show you're watching? Maybe. Draycott's on your doorstep. Ah, well, you're very lucky. I'll tell you what to do, Ron. If Draycott's on your doorstep, there's a guy that works in the lodge there called Tom Bird. And I think he actually does some guiding sessions on the lake. If you speak to him, I'm sure he'll steer you right. And he'll also sort you out for some bank fishing as well. Tom Bird, in case you missed the name. Hi Nick, streamer fishing in the Eden. Any advice? Fished there all my life, but streamers are new to me. Nick, I've fished Eden on several occasions with my pal, a guy, in fact you might know him, Del Spry. He lives up near Carlisle and he's a phenomenal fisherman, and I'll give him a plug. He's a professional guide, and if you wanted a day out learning to streamer fish, then you could do worse than give him a tap up. I think he's called the Lakes Fly Fishing Guide. But what I would suggest with streamers, when the river's big, is I often use a DI3, and I find that a DI3, and I've got a belt that I use that turns into a stripping basket, and I just use roly-poly. I don't know if you're familiar with the roly-poly method of retrieving, but cast the DI3 across the river and then just roly-poly it back, and that can be great fun. And you get, you don't hook as many, but you get a lot of hits, a lot of action, and great fun. Ron, you can PM me on Facebook. Mark, what is the difference in the UV head cement and the UV resin? How do you decide which to use? Well, that's an easy question for me, Mark, because I don't use the head cement. Basically, the difference is, with cement, you're going to have to put that fly to the side to dry. With resin, and certainly the UV resin I'm using, once you've zapped it with the torch, that's a done deal. It's the head's dry, and you can put the fly quite literally into your fly box. So it's a no-brainer for me. I use UV resin to finish all my flies. Ben, what size of hooks do you tie your egg flies on? Blobs and lures. And also, what time thread would you recommend a new fly tyer to get to start? Thanks. Ben, that's a great question, and there's obviously lots of different threads out there, and when I started it was uni-thread and that was your lot, but there's a company called Vivas that do something called GSP, and it's a white thread. I think Fish On do Ultimate Time Silk, and I'm not sure if Semperfly do a white nano silk, but they certainly do nano silk because the black stuff's awesome. But I would buy a white nano silk, take your pick, and 5 or 6 different coloured Sharpies. So use the white stuff to tie up, and then whatever colour you want to use for the head, you get the Sharpie out, colour the thread, and you're sorted. And if you're just starting and you don't want to buy every different colour of thread, that's what to use. And I would suggest that 30 denier will cover most of your needs for that. I hope that answers your question, pal. Daniel, how are you? Sweden, beautiful country, and fish a lot with dry flies in rivers for grayling. What is your favourite dry fly when fishing for grayling? Daniel, that's a great question, thanks. I like a green-bodied sedge for grayling. I don't know why, it just seems to work really well for me, and I fish that in a size 18. I would love to get out to Sweden at some point and fish. I've got a friend who runs trout line, and he tells me that the fishing for grayling in Sweden is absolutely phenomenal. The higher up the country you get, the better the fishing is. So it is on my bucket list. But yeah, a green-bodied sedge is the answer to that one. No worries, Ben. And you're very welcome, Ron. Right, about 10 minutes left. So if there's anything else anyone would like to know, please start typing. Nope. I think is that us done for the day. My kids will be at home going, Dad, just you get that shop, get them M&Ms and crisps bought, and get a big bar of chocolate for Mum. Aye, okay. Right, guys, I'm gonna. Oh, too late. I'm just going to try and finish there, but Dean's come in with one last one. Can you talk about your leader recipe for Euro nymphing? Yes, I can. So, I've tried lots of different things for the old Euro nymphing, and it seems to be a fluid thing with me. I've tried the bicolour monofilaments, lots of other different things, but what I settled on this last year gone, I was using a hen's tapered Euro nymphing line, and the reason I've gone to this now is it doesn't fit within Fitzmush rules, so it's more than twice the length of my rod, which is negligible anyway, because I barely fish with more than 2 or 3 foot out of the tip ring anyway. But to that, I've attached something that was shown to me last year by a guy called Sean Doyle, and he was shown it by a guy called Terry Bromwell. So it's called Magic Line, and it's like a braid, and I use about 1 foot of that at the end of my bought hen's leader, and I tie it on. And what this stuff is, this magic braid it's called, is it's very, very thin, and I use coloured wax to colour it, and then a little tippet ring on the end of that, and then I just set up whatever depth I want, usually about, I do nose to the end of my arrow, which is about 3.5 feet, and then my first fly, if I'm fishing a team, 50 centimetres down I'll put another fly. I only fish double nymph. I don't generally, unless it's grayling, I don't generally fish more than 2 flies. So that's pretty much how I set up my Euro nymphing rig. I think I did do a video on it. If you wanted to look for it on YouTube, I'm sure I did a video. Sorry. Kids just keep pestering me. I'm going to switch my phone off in a minute. Right, let's see what else. Anything else before we go? Rob, I haven't fished with cane. I'm clumsy, and I'm not very careful. I think if I got a cane rod, I'd be fearful of breaking it, to be perfectly honest with you. But maybe one day when I retire, I might treat myself to a bit of cane. See how that goes. Skipper, no, I don't do question time very often. The last one was May last year, but while we're in lockdown, I just thought, you know what, I'm not going fishing. I like talking about fishing. Why not do this question time? So I've done this. I'll see how I'm fixed, but I might do another one before the end of March. But there's only so many questions that you can be asked, and how many times I can answer the same question. And you know, I'm certainly not the most knowledgeable guy in the world. I've just been doing it a long time. I've tried lots of different stuff, so I'll see. I'll try and do another one before the end of lockdown, if that's okay. Well, thanks very much for joining me today, guys. What I'll do is, once I've got the video downloaded onto my laptop, I'll edit it, and when I stick the video up onto YouTube, I'll do little indexes with where the questions are, so you don't have to listen to my waffle for an hour and a half. You can simply cut to the section that you're interested in. So I'm going to say thanks very much for watching. Before you go, there is a little subscribe button. It's just down there in the corner. Please click that, and I'll see you all next time.